Welcome, everybody. Hope your days are off to a good start and your weeks. We're so excited today about the webinar here about Einstein GPT and how AI is revolutionizing customer service. We've got such a great panel here, and I'm excited to hand it over. For those who don't know, I'm Casey Lemaire, VP Marketing here at NeuraFlash, and I just wanted to go through a couple logistics before we get started. Before we begin, so don't worry, have to drop, things come up. This will be recorded and it will be sent out post the webinar. Addition, we have some great speakers here. If you have questions, submit that through the Q&A function and we'll be answering questions at the end of the session, or if they come up naturally during the session as well. Additionally, hang on, if you make it through the whole webinar, hang on for the end for 3 questions at the end. Your feedback is super important for us to make sure we're delivering great content for you. So without further ado, super excited to introduce you to Jason and Patrick, your speakers today. So Patrick, I'm going to pass this over to you to kick off the introductions.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Casey. As Casey mentioned, my name is Patrick Barries. I'm head of product and innovation here at NeuraFlash, and super happy to be speaking with you today about the future of generative AI, Einstein GPT, and the contact center. I've only been at NeuraFlash for about 4 or 5 months. I spent a lot of time in the industry, including 12 years at Salesforce, most of that on the Service Cloud product. And I'm super happy to be joined today by Jason. Jason from Pearson Education is going to share with us some of his views on AI in the contact center and where Pearson is thinking about it. Jason, thank you so much again for joining us today. Would you like to introduce yourself a little bit and tell us a bit about Pearson?
Yeah, sure, Patrick, and thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today. This is also a very exciting topic for me. My name is Jason Bridges with Pearson Education. For those of you who are not aware, Pearson Education is the world's leading learning company, and our purpose is to add life to a lifetime of learning. At Pearson Education, I'm a director of strategy supporting our global higher ed services and technical support teams. In my role as director of strategy, I identify ways to optimize our technologies to elevate the customer experience. And sort of my anchoring and guiding principles in everything I do is just to make it as easy as I can for our customers to do business with us, reducing friction and minimizing their effort, while also elevating the agent experience to help delight our customers at the same time.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Jason. So, we're here to talk about sort of the future and what is being released from Salesforce and what generative AI is doing in the contact center. But let's take a minute and talk about, where AI has been and what's happening today in contact centers and customer service from AI. What we've seen over the last 10 years plus where AI is being brought into the contact center is improved productivity, efficiency, new and dynamic ways to find information, and expanding the capabilities of our people and our processes. We're also seeing actually an increase in complexity of the cases or the incidents that humans are handling because automation and AI sort of peel off some of the easier cases. And so we're already seeing this kind of impact, and we have for several years with things like chatbots and agent assistants and recommended knowledge articles and more. Jason, what are you seeing in the contact center in terms of where AI has already had an impact, and what does that look like at Pearson?
Yeah, thank you, Patrick. And you're right. In my team as the director of strategy, my team currently owns the Salesforce chat. Within the Salesforce chat, we also have the Einstein chatbot directly embedded into the experience. We were actually a fairly early adopter in what the Einstein chatbot and its capabilities could offer. And we've even recently evolved that experience to include a little bit more in partnership with NeuraFlash. In our journey with the chat and enhancing the chat experiences, we've really peeled back the layers of what the Einstein bot can do by connecting it to other platforms internally to help expand in its capabilities while also enabling natural language understanding and processing. So what that's allowed us to do, Patrick, is we've been able to automate some of the easier tasks on the front end. So instead of us just passing stuff directly over to an agent, what we're now doing is we're automating some of the easier needs around our customer service teams and technical support teams by deflecting that volume into the bot and decreasing the volume to the agent so they can focus on the more complex issues.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's certainly in line with I think what we've seen from many customers, and thank you for that ongoing partnership with NeuraFlash. NeuraFlash's roots started with chatbots many years ago, and as sort of the AI partner to Salesforce for over 6 or 7 years, the lifetime of the company at this point. And that success has led us to more and more things to do as our partnership, and we look forward to where that goes. I think the idea of humans having more complexity at their fingertips while we are handling some of the easier work with AI automation and expanded self-service leads us a little bit into where we're seeing GPT playing a role. Where does generative AI and where does Einstein GPT kind of play a role in the future? What are you thinking about in terms of next generation platforms like Einstein GPT impacting customer service beyond where we are today, and in the mold of Pearson as well?
Yeah, and so a really interesting question. Where I really see this is it's going to continue to evolve a lot of the work that we've already done today. And what I mean by that is it's going to continue to build off of the user experience and elevate the customer experience in ways that we could not have done in the past. Really, some of the impacts that we're going to see with this is the ability for us to deploy a lot more capabilities much faster with less effort. And we're also getting the ability to also have like enhanced machine learning. As I described today in our chat experience, we're mainly building on intent sets. And when we say language understanding, I still have a team of people who are interpreting these answers. What Einstein GPT and these other AI platforms allow us to do is to sort of bypass the need for those manual processes and just really speed things up for us. Then also start to orchestrate through other systems and platforms that maybe we couldn't have supported in the past. Some other impacts I am seeing too, Patrick, with Einstein GPT and these other AI platforms, it starts to give us the ability to have much deeper and robust insights in what the customer's needs are. It also allows us to better support our agents. And what I mean by supporting our agents is we can start removing the redundant tasks that our agents have to perform. That can include some things like updating cases or updating values directly in Salesforce. We can just have the AI partner with the agents and sort of do a side-by-side experience. The GPT can also offer up recommendations and replies. So again, it's really elevating the agents, which then allows us the opportunity to better delight our customers in the experience. And when I make mention to it providing much deeper and robust insights, there are some capabilities where GPT helps us to understand through conversation or data mining, like what are the customer needs are. And historically, I've had a view into that, but that view is not immediate. It would take me about 24 to 48 hours to fully unpack what the trends of our customers, what they're saying, maybe some sentiment, if there's a sort of a reoccurring theme that's coming into the contact center. We might be a day delayed in actually knowing what that is. Whereas now, the Einstein GPT model actually gives us that real-time visibility, so we can be proactive in addressing the needs of our customers.
Yeah, that's outstanding. And I think, as you mentioned, sort of an extension of where things have been, and that's why we wanted to talk a little bit about AI's impact already. There's been a lot of buzz around generative AI and large language models and the capabilities that they bring to how we work and how we communicate. And certainly those impacts will be expansive for how we operate and how we get things done. But in many ways, it is an extension of what's already been out there in the market, what people are already testing and using. And that's why, when we work with customers around how they get ready and how they optimize for these newer technologies, we look at how they're using the prior technologies. How are you using digital channels? How are you using AI today, et cetera, et cetera? And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But the capabilities that are possible today with what generative AI brings to the table with large language models really leapfrog ahead of what's been possible before, and we're already seeing some impact and quick adoption in many cases in the contact center. The systems have been trained, the tools have now been trained on such a vast amount of data, billions, hundreds of billions of words of data. And with the generative AI capabilities, it's actually able to answer questions that it hasn't been trained on, to your point, Jason. And so it can extrapolate and interpolate from the data points it knows to data points it doesn't even know. In addition, the capabilities around deep understanding and output of human-like speech. That is being able to understand human-like speech and then being able to output human-like speech on top of the huge data set that it's, be able to make decisions on, is really, really, I think, directly applicable to the kind of work that we do in the contact centers. But the best fit use cases are things like replies, agent assistance, customer assistance, knowledge retrieval, content creation, summarization. And we're seeing narrow use cases like these being developed and being deployed fairly quickly. And Salesforce's releases of Einstein GPT follow along with those best fit use cases. And one of the things that's really interesting about how Salesforce is releasing this functionality is because they are, moving quickly and responding to what the market needs. The use cases are relatively narrowly defined, and we're finding that that means they are relatively lightweight to implement. Something like recommended replies, or something like knowledge article creation or interaction summaries don't require a lot of rework for organizations within their Salesforce instance, and they can actually start using some of that functionality very quickly. As we are, starting to see people begin to use the functionality and start to get those, outcomes from it, one of the things we often get asked is, how does someone get started, or should they be thinking about around adopting this kind of technology, and what should they be aware of as everyone is trying to move quickly to make sure that they don't, fall down or push too hard in the wrong places. And I think for me, one of the things that starts with is to center around and know your business goals. That is, we do not want to be walking around with a shiny object solution and trying to make that apply to every problem. Instead, we want to be grounded on where you're trying to go, where is your company going, what are your challenges, what are your objectives, and then map that to the right solutions to help get you there. And those right solutions may be generative AI in some cases. They may also be what we would call traditional AI. It may be automation. It may be changing the way that your agents work or your agent workspace. It may be digitizing your channels and your processes. And it really kind of focusing on how do we drive to the outcomes you're trying to get to, rather than coming in with a solution first. I think that's something that we all have to kind of keep grounded on and keep in the back of our minds as everybody wants to move quickly onto this technology because of the great promises. It's not necessarily the technology that gets you there. It's understanding those goals that you're trying to achieve. NeuraFlash is known as sort of the outcomes or the customer success company because we are focused on driving those outcomes. In addition, you certainly want to be careful about some of the things that the new technologies can bring, like incorrect answers, known in the industry as hallucinations, data privacy, agent oversight of what's being suggested, closed loop bias, being careful about how your data is being used, and making sure that the answers that you're giving to your agents and then to your customers are not only correct but appropriate and consistent. And those are things that, for example, Salesforce has built into their trust layer. If you were going to build these kind of solutions, outside of that or on your own, you would need to keep those things in mind and also, kind of construct and build those. The other thing that I think is really important is to start small, is to recognize that we're all in a learning phase as we continue to evolve on these technologies and see how they apply to our businesses in particular. And one of the stories that I had in my time at Salesforce leading on Service Cloud was a Fortune 50 company, really, really large implementation on the service side, was transitioning 40,000 agents off of a legacy platform onto Service Cloud. And so it was going to be a journey, right? It was going to be a very large project, but they started very intentionally with one single chat queue and 36 agents. And when they started in that one place, they were able to focus on what do those agents need? What are the outcomes we're trying to drive to? And because they involved those users early and they had that narrow focus, they were able to be successful with that small group and actually create that group as advocates who were now saying, we want the change, we want the new technology, we want the advancements. And in fact, the rest of the agents across the organization were now pulling change. They wanted the change because they saw the success of this small group. As we are learning with these technologies, learning about the technologies themselves, learning about how they work with our organization, learning about the pros and cons of different methodologies, we really do want to keep that, new mindset, beginner's mindset in place. So starting small and then expanding from there, taking into account things like data privacy, and then using the technology to generate wins and successes, which then snowball into further wins and successes. Jason, how are you thinking about what you want to keep in mind as you begin to get started on this journey, keeping in mind that it is a journey, of course? What are some things that you're thinking about for Pearson and that you think maybe other companies should also think about?
Absolutely, and I agree with everything you just said, Patrick. I mean, it really is about the blending of your technologies and digitizing where you can in the right places. There's been just a significant amount of buzz since the start of this year around AI and all of the GPT models and what's being offered in the space. I'll just be the first to say I am confident in saying that there is not one solution to everything that you want to accomplish. It really is identifying what are your outcomes at the end of the day, like defining what that is, what you want to solve for. And more importantly, specifically around AI, like understand what AI is and what it can and what it cannot do. Understand that you have to solve for and identify target use cases that you feel, let's say it's something you feel confident that you can support with your existing infrastructure, or understanding what needs to be done to be able to support implementing some of these more enhanced technologies. But again, there is not one perfect solution in place today that's going to be, out of the gate is going to solve for everything that you're looking for. So just understanding it is definitely going to be a blend. And the other thing too is there going to be a sense of people just getting really overwhelmed around, how do I solution or how do I solve for stuff? Well, you make a great point. Start small. And what I think of is some words that have been shared with me as I'm going down the journey is like, be very intentional in what you want to accomplish, right? It really is about starting small. The worst thing you can do though is not starting at all, right? You really need to ground yourself and figure out like what really is important at the end of the day. For me, I really feel like the bigger opportunity for us today in our service organization is really optimizing on the agent experience, which will then lead to better customer outcomes as well. So I feel like you get one with the other. So enhancing the agent experience will definitely drive to a better customer experience. And then a lot of what you said too, I completely agree with Patrick. Like, do a change impact analysis to understand like what are the impacts of all these changes and these evolving technologies. When you go live, like what do you expect the changes to be? So take the right amount of time to take a step back and really evaluate the organization and understand there's no simple change. There's such a thing as a simple change, right? Really understand what are those impacts of the change to get the people around you ready. And understand too that there was also a lot of buzz this year that GPT was just while I do agree it's definitely an emerging technology, probably has very unlimited potential as we continue to grow into it, but it's definitely not that smoking gun that people may have indicated early on. So I still think there's a lot of room of opportunity for improvement. And some of the same things that we're being very mindful of here, data privacy and protecting our customer data. Privacy and data is absolutely paramount to everything we do here at Pearson. So we are not willing to compromise in any way to enable technology if there's actually a risk of any of that being exposed. So we're being very cautious of that. I would say we have a very conservative approach when it comes to that. But I will say that the data trust layer that Salesforce is offering does make that a very compelling use case for us to explore that option. And there's also another reason why we are actively exploring more of the agent-assisted Einstein GPT features is we're not quite ready to adopt a technology where we're at risk of the AI hallucinating responses to our customers. I don't know if the AI giving an invalid answer to our customers any worse than a human doing it, but at this point, we're more comfortable not allowing our technology any room to provide those errors to our customers. So that's really the direction that we're going to start with.
That makes a lot of sense, Jason. And I think, as we see some of the early use cases coming out from Salesforce and from other companies building independent solutions, we certainly see a focus on human in the loop processes where the machine is giving answers or recommendations to an agent who's then making the final call about what's appropriate or not appropriate for the customer. And to that point about agents, and you mentioned, sort of the change management aspect of things, how are you thinking about sort of the combination of human plus machine? I'm really passionate about this space and think that this is an area where we'll see a lot of advancements going forward. But the goal here, I think, is to really optimize those two things together and to use each of them for what they're good at. How are you thinking about, sort of the agent experience and the combination of technology and people as you, kind of plot your path at Pearson around AI?
No, I agree, Patrick. It really is about a combination of the experience. Like as we discussed, even in my current generation of AI with the Einstein chatbot and some of my other, I would say first generation of AI platforms, we've already had the ability to deflect volume away from our agents. But that by no way has that replaced the need for agents. If anything, it has actually created an even more greater need to have the right person involved at that right moment in time. But what I mean by that is, again, we can deflect away some of the easier interactions. And I think customers actually, I would say they actually expect the ability for our technology to self-serve or support them for the things where they don't really need a human. But in the more complex issues or in the scenarios where your customers really want to engage with a human, it becomes even more important and even more paramount to make sure that they are available for that. And I really feel like that, incorporating technology into these tasks, like removing the redundancies and really allowing the agents to get hyper-focused on delighting the customers and making sure that they can deliver on a great experience is going to be more important. And I feel like the customers are saying the same thing. It's almost like the having voice as a channel, right? We know that voice is not going to go away anytime soon. Now, there are some things you can do to enhance the voice experience. But when a customer expects to be able to pick up a phone and have a conversation with someone, that's not going to change today or anytime in the near future. So again, it really is about figuring out the right way to complement what the humans are doing and sort of have that assisted experience with the agents, but really freeing up their capacity to get hyper-focused on delivering consistent outcomes and then really delivering on a great experience.
Yeah, I think that's well said. As I mentioned, I'm passionate about this idea of, getting the most out of the technology plus the people, and using the people as the, kind of decision maker when possible, as the technology sort of elevates them and supercharges their capabilities. I'd love it for agents to feel like they are, they have a superpower with AI helping them solve problems. And of course, good agents are interested in solving customer problems. So I think human in the loop and sort of assisting agents is a big part of that story. I think also, using people and using technology for what they're good at. For example, the ability for technology to find information, to suggest replies, to give options, to automate a process, actually allows the agents to focus more on the conversation at hand and to actually connect more with your customers. If they are swivel chairing less, if they are searching for information less, if they are presented with options and alternatives and can make a good choice, they are actually more connected and more empathetic with the person on the other end of the line. And that pays dividends, whether it's in sales or service or marketing. If your people can be more connected to the people on the other end of the conversation, you get better results. And I love the idea of being able to elevate the human-to-human interaction by using technology for what it's good at. I also think this is a space that we will see a lot of advancement in the next several years, is how do we blend these two together? Not how does technology replace a person, but rather where do we use the people power and where do we use the technology power? And I think especially in contact centers and the customer service space, that's going to be really, really critical. There will always be the need for people as part of that process. And of course, at many of those times in need on the service side, you want to be engaged with a person and not necessarily being served by a machine, even when that's a possible outcome. So that's a really interesting space that I think we'll see a lot of motion on. The way that we, think about that at NeuraFlash is really to focus in on that agent experience, to look at raising those capabilities of the combination of your people plus technology, to think about things like human engineering your IVRs to your chatbots and those internal processes that you can automate, but also want to keep the human connected too. So as we're looking at, more and more companies kind of getting on this bandwagon and starting down this path using some of the recommendations we just gave, we often get asked about, what can businesses do to understand if their organization is ready? How do you get started within your organization, in terms of setting the right foundation? And what we really, kind of proselytize and bring to the table as a partner is to really sit down and understand those business goals, to really think about where is it that you're trying to go, and then to map that to not just the technologies, but the pieces you need to have in place. Obviously, data is a key component here. Technology can go find data or find answers if you have it structured, if you have it in a way that's readable and understandable by that technology. The current use of digital capabilities like digital channels, Service Cloud Voice or other voice solutions, which are essentially digital at their heart, the use of Einstein, the use of knowledge. What does your agent experience look like? Are you using flows and automation as part of your processes? These are all foundational to then be able to be multiplied by new technologies like generative AI and large language models. And of course, understanding your processes and your people in order to optimize the combination of the two, as I just talked about. So, Jason, given all that we've talked about, what is your longer term vision for AI and where are you getting started within Pearson?
Yeah, so my longer term vision in North Star is going to continue to be focused, is just going to continue hyper focus on delighting our customers, Patrick. And really going back to a lot of what we talked about today, for me, the same, I'm going to put into practice exactly what I've articulated today. It's going to be start small. For us, what we've identified, what we really feel our strongest use case is going to be with the agent assisted capabilities. And then not losing sight of why our customer data and privacy is super important for us. But we do know that there are some closed data models that we can lean in on potentially long term to be able to take advantage of. And for me, it's taking advantage of that. But more importantly, I kind of, my guidance for anytime I create a roadmap or a strategy, Patrick, is really walk, run, fly. Start small, continue to build off of it. And then myself, and I always encourage my team to like be open to doing an iterative approach, knowing that it might not be perfect on day one, but know that you can build and improve on that, have the right resources in place to be able to do that as well. But ensuring that we have a well-documented roadmap and strategy to sort of build off what our expected outcomes are. But again, starting on the agent experience, even getting into the conversation mining so we can help identify trends and do a trend analysis to be proactive in supporting our customers. But yeah, just starting there and then building out our success and just also having the right partner in place to be able to support us in our journey. I do feel like it's really important for organizations to be very mindful that if you're not sure where to start at, like get a right partner in place to be able to help with that. And do an actual assessment of your organization. I will say I'm extremely fortunate in my role that all of our digital channels and tools are directly in the Salesforce ecosystem. So I feel like I already have sort of an advantage there to get started. But yeah, really excited about the potential that Einstein GPT and these other AI platforms can bring forward. And that's kind of where I'm going to be going long term.
That's awesome. And we certainly look forward to that partnership and helping along that journey in any way that we can. Jason, again, thank you so much for being with us today and sharing the Pearson story. So in summary, what we talked about today was, kind of how to get started with these new technologies, what they're good at, starting small, recognizing the foundational pieces that you may already have in place, and evaluating how ready you are for optimizing some of the newer technologies like Gen AI and large language models. That is understanding your people and your processes today, taking a look at your adoption and your use of what we would call sort of traditional or first gen AI, as well as automation. How are you using chatbots today? How's that going? How can that be optimized? How are you using things like next best action, recommended knowledge articles, automation, other types of agent assistance capabilities that are out there? How is that going? And, can that be extended with some of the newer technologies or enhanced with some of the newer technologies? Starting small, finding that right group or that right process or use case, being able to start with, kind of humans in the loop, so that you can, take a look at those answers and, kind of make sure that they're appropriate before passing them on, but also tweak, and continue to get better over time. I think one of the things that we learned with chatbots and other technologies that have come since is that you can't go off by yourself for 6 months and go build the perfect chatbot. That rather it's an iterative process, that you start small with relatively low risk, and that's why human in the loop is important. And that you start to get data from that allows you to keep tweaking it and tweaking it and tweaking it. One of the first big chatbot customers at Salesforce rolled out a chatbot that had something like 36% customer satisfaction when using the bot, and the very first time it was released. And for that company, that was compared to about 70% when dealing with an agent. But because they were getting data and they were managing to that data and continuing to tweak, over the matter of just a couple weeks, they had satisfaction with the chatbot up to the level of it was with agents. And so that concept of starting small goes along with iteration and being able to understand what's happening in your organization, be able to track it, manage to it, and make it better and better. Keeping in mind things like data privacy, being able to have a clear understanding of how your data is being used, what data is being used, and also filtering those answers coming back, whether that be systematically or with a person. And then, of course, having that longer term goal in mind based on your business outcomes that you're trying to get to. And of course, picking the right partner, picking the partner like NeuraFlash that has expertise in the space and has this mindset of iteration and of business objectives. We are not the kind of company that will come in and turn something on as fast as possible and walk away. Rather, we are focused on trying to drive to those outcomes that you're looking to achieve in your organization. And to that point, NeuraFlash has an offering specifically around GPT readiness, where we will come in for a couple of weeks and we will take a look at your organization and how you're using technologies today, and give you a roadmap forward that you can choose to use on your own or use with us, to kind of go down that path to an optimum deployment and use of some of the newer technologies. Of course, this space is moving fast. We're staying on top of it and very close to our partners like Salesforce, who are continuing to innovate and deliver some really, really amazing use cases here. And I'm looking forward to what's going to come at the end of this year and into next year as well as working with many of you in your organizations. So thank you guys for joining today. Certainly know that there's a lot of interest in this topic, and we will continue to put out content and help our customers down this path. With that, Casey, I think we might have a couple questions that have already come in.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Jason and Patrick. Super excited to kind of listen to your guys' perspective around generative AI and how it's impacting service. A couple questions that came in. Patrick, I think I'll throw this one to you, is you spoke a little bit prior in the conversation around hallucination. And one question that came in is, what does that exactly mean when an AI hallucinates, and how does someone actually prevent that from happening?
Yeah, so technically what a hallucination means is that the technology comes up with an answer which is untrue. Now, it could be untrue because in all the data that it's been, that's consumed, there was untrue data as well as true data. And that's, that's part of training on a really big data set and a public data set. It could also be that when it interpolated or extrapolated, and what I mean by that is it knows certain data points, but then it fills in the spots in between those data points, or it extends the line to create answers that it, maybe doesn't know, that maybe it was incorrect on that. I can give you an example. When I was doing some early testing around the GPT platform, well, one of the questions I asked was, what was the top song in December of 2022? And it said, I can't predict the future. Well, that's because it was only trained on data up through 2021, right? And these large language models take a while to train. And so, that's something to be aware of, is that it may not be the most updated data in the world. Also, I've seen cases where you ask it, how do I reset my password on Netflix? And there's a lot of good information about that on the internet that it consumed. There's also some bad information on the internet that it consumed. Maybe it was old, maybe it was incorrect. So sometimes you get a wrong answer there. I also had an interesting use case where my girlfriend's from Texas, and she was saying that she was stayed on the Colorado River in Texas. And in my mind, I'm thinking geographically, the Colorado River can't be in Texas. It creates a Grand Canyon. It's over in California, Arizona. That doesn't make sense. So I asked GPT, I said, does the Colorado River go through Texas? And it said no. And then I said, what are the top 5 biggest rivers in Texas? And number 3 was the Colorado River. Well, it turns out that there's a second river called the Colorado River that is in Texas, but it's not the Colorado River. So those are examples of how this happens in the actual technology. The way that you can prevent it is, one, you can validate answers. So you can validate answers against what your organization has. What are the best practices? What do your knowledge articles say? You can also use that human in the loop to help ferret out where there may be things that don't make sense. There are other techniques as well where you can use prior answers and compare it and say, is this in line or is this out of line from prior answers? You can even ask multiple sources and then compare answers that way. So there's several techniques. None of them are sort of foolproof, but they can reduce that exposure. And I think right now, based on where the technology is, human in the loop is one of the most effective ways to do that, which is why we were talking about that before.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Next question that's coming in, Jason, I'm going to throw this to you. So there's a lot of excitement around generative AI. Are there specific use cases or features within generative AI or Einstein GPT that you're most excited about leveraging at Pearson?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I mean, yeah, there is a lot to be excited about, but for me, the features that I really want to unpack and take full advantage of really is going back to the agent assist type model, where the AI can have the human in a loop. And just share a little bit about our business model. Like we have times of the year where we have a significant peak in volume. So what that means is we onboard a pretty good amount of agents to be able to support that for a very short period of time. Now, I think anyone who's in the service and support space can appreciate that the onboarding in itself is quite a process. And you can train people as much as you want, but until you give them the actual exposure to, to the customer experience, there's going to be some gaps. And I think what really gets me excited about implementing or introducing AI or other digital enhancements into that experience is we can now have an AI or GPT sort of partnering with the human in the loop and start serving up recommendations. That could be relevant knowledge-based articles, or making recommendations, or helping them take the appropriate steps to get to resolution much quicker. It also prevents escalations from taking place too. So it really again, makes it really easy for our customers to do business with us, and it also expedites the resolution. And then within that too, as I said, there are newer agents. We can also leverage the AI to help, add case notes or close out case history, or just make those updates directly in the CRM. So again, I really think that the agent assist, enhancing the agent experience for me is probably the most valuable use case. And those are the features that I'm looking at right now. That's
really exciting. And then we've got one more question here and we'll wrap it up. So if you guys have any more, feel free to drop them in the chat. Patrick, I'm going to throw this one over to you. We talked a little bit, I believe, in the conversation around privacy and data. And I know even Jason, you mentioned around the data and privacy is super important to Pearson. Patrick, how do you ensure, so one of these questions that came in is like, how do you ensure that the company's sensitive data is not used to train large language models?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that Salesforce has worked out with OpenAI as one example that's part of what Salesforce calls the trust layer is that, one, the minimum amount of data is ever passed along to get the answer that you need from AI. So, for example, your entire CRM is not exposed to the OpenAI platform. Rather, if you're asking a question about summarizing a case or summarizing a transcript, a conversation, only that piece of data is sent along. Secondly, before it's sent, it's actually scrubbed of PII data or any confidential company information. That's part of the configuration that you build into that layer as a customer to say, this kind of data I don't want exposed. And then thirdly, the contract that Salesforce has with OpenAI is that, one, none of that data is ever stored at OpenAI. It is literally not written to a database at all. It is in memory only just for that transaction, and then it's gone. And secondly, the data from Salesforce customers is never used to enhance the OpenAI model. So those are all contractually negotiated and part of the way that Salesforce is interacting with OpenAI. If you were going to build the solution yourself, I would encourage you to look at those kind of terms and those kind of requirements. It will vary from business to business in terms of your interpretation of what you're comfortable with or not comfortable with. If you're a very B2C focused company, then maybe your knowledge base is pretty much public anyway. And so maybe that's not really a concern. But of course, many companies would have business critical data they don't want shared. It also does mean that there are some questions that are difficult to get answered by those kind of technologies today. For example, if you want to summarize a conversation, that's relatively straightforward. If you want to create a knowledge article out of a case, as long as that case data is, not super sensitive, that's not too difficult either. But if you wanted to ask a question like, which of my customers is most likely to be interested in this new product I'm building? Well, to answer that question, you would have to expose almost your whole CRM. And so that's probably not an appropriate question to be answered by this technology at this time because of maybe not wanting to get that large of a data exposure. And so thinking about it in terms of, how do I minimize the data I'm sending? How do I scrub that data? How do I ensure that data is not being used or stored in any way? And then thinking about it from, your company's perspective, what is the sensitive data I have versus what is the public data I have? Those are some tips, I guess, I would give and that we would guide customers on as part of an engagement.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Patrick. And then thanks again, Jason, for your time today. We're super excited to have you both. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to NeuraFlash. We'll be happy to help you on your journey with generative AI. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Jason.
Bye.
Thanks, Casey.
Thank you.